we'll get started. So welcome to lecture 4. Today we're talking about table views. Okay, just a quick announcement. The drop deadline is this Thursday, October 21st. And then we'll do some review for last lecture. So the first question is, how would you present or push a view controller? Does anyone have an answer? What would you use to push and what would you use to present? Oh yes, what's your name? David? Yeah, that's correct. V. So when you push a view controller, that's with a navigation controller. And then when you present, that's when it shows up like from the bottom. Yeah.
Is this why a person doesn't have a navigation bar?
Present, yeah. So it doesn't. It's like a sheet that pulls up on the bottom.
Right.
And then with the navigation controller, one good thing about navigation controller is you can keep pushing view controller on top of it. It's kind of like a stack, and you can just keep pushing view controller and then pop them off. And yeah, you're right. Only navigation controller will have the top navigation. Yeah.
Could you present like multiple view controllers?
You technically could, but then like I don't know if you've. I guess you've already seen it. Like it kind of push up one sheet by one sheet. It's like it's gonna look not good. Yeah. Okay. The next question is, why do you use delegation? Yes. What's your name? Albert. Okay. What's your answer? Right, that's right. So you use delegation if you want to pass some information between view controller or views. Anyone have questions on that? Okay. Then we'll go into UITableViews. So a UITableView is basically a scrollable list of items. So it has the table view have rows, and then each row will be some item you want to show. And then also UITableView, you work with like some classes and delegates to allow some interaction with the view controller and the table. We can look at an example. So if you have an iPhone, I'm sure you have already seen the settings screen. And the settings is basically done with a UITableView. So you see like there's a list of rows, and each like row I guess kind of looks similar. So you don't actually have to make like 10 like UI labels and 10 like UI image view. You kind of just like make a table that's like repeating the same things. And then similarly with Spotify, there's also a UITableView with your list of songs. So a UITableView is divided into sections, and then within each section you have rows, and each row is a UITableView cell, and then each cell just display like the information you want. We can look at a more concrete example. So in the settings screen, you can see like there are multiple sections. So the first section, section 0, is like your name and stuff. And then section 1, section 2, and if you go on, there's like more sections. But here in this screen, you can see like there are 3 sections shown in this table view. And then within each section, you have rows. So in section 0, there's only 1 row, so you only have like row 0. And then in section 1, you have like 5 rows, and then section 2, you have 4 rows. So you can have like different number of rows for each section. Anyone have a question at this point? No. Yeah.
So what's the benefit of having a section with 1 row as opposed to like?
So by default, like Apple will actually like divide up it will like put separation between the sections. If you want. Yeah, and also like you might want to show different kinds of cells in each section. If you want to, like, for example, you see like section 0 and section 1, it like look different, right? The things look different. So to differentiate, you can put them into like sections. Yeah. And then, yeah, so each row is what we call a UITableView cell. So you see it on the screen time. And then how UITableView work is you have a UITableView controller, not a UI, a table view controller. So that just manages all the things in the table view, and then you also have a data source. And the data source for a table view just provides the data for the table. So like here, the data could be like the airplane mode, the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth. And then the delegate is helps with managing user interaction with the table views content. So that could be like what you do if you like select on one of these rows. And then lastly, the cells is just basically what views you have in each row. Yeah. And then the way you like initialize a UITableView, you just do like table view equal UITableView, and then you do normally like just like how you usually set up a view, you do the translate auto resizing masking to constraints, so you can say your constraints for the table view, and then you add it as a sub view to the view, just like how you did any like UI label, UI image view in the past. And then there are a few extra things you need to set up for a UI table view. So first, since you want your table view to show some data, usually you have like a list of data that you want your UI table view to show. So here is like the var table data. Yeah, and then your table view also need to conform to the delegate and data source. So you would usually you would do table view dot delegate is equal to self, and then table view data source equal to self. We'll talk about more in detail on what that means later. And then you will also have to register a cell for the table view. So each table view has could have different type of cell, and you have to like say that I want to use this cell class for this table view. So that's what you do with the register. So then, so UITableView data source is a protocol. So we learned about protocol last lecture. So it's just basically like some function. If you want to conform to UITableView data source, you have to like implement those functions that's in the protocol. So the data source is important because that's where you like set up number of rows that you want in each section, and then also set up like what cell you want to be in each row. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any questions? No. Okay. Yeah, and then the function that like implements the number of rows is just called number of rows in section, and then there's cell for row at, where you define what cell to use in each row, and then you also optionally can say how many sections there are in each table view. So yeah, this is the implementation. So you have to extend view controller to conform to UITableView data source, and then so there's like the first thing is number of rows in section. So that's where you pass how many rows you want in your table view. So normally that would just be like whatever data you have, and you like count however many data points you have. And then you also have to implement cell for row at. So in that part, you define where your cell is, and you return the cell. Yeah, we'll talk about like dequeue reusable cell more later. It might be, yeah. Yeah, it's a protocol. Yeah, it's a protocol. So, like, in I mean the homeworks, right? I mean last lecture you learned about protocol. So it's very similar. Like you extend the view controller to UITableView data source, and you have to implement some functions that the protocol requires. Yeah.
Wait, so UITableView data source is that protocol?
Oh, sorry.
The UITableView data source is a protocol?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, the protocol is already like UITableView data source is already built in. So that's why it would require when you like when you extend view controller to UITableView data source, it will require you to implement number of rows in section and cell for row at. So these two are the most important like functions that you have to implement, because that's what you define how you define like how many rows you should show, and then what kind of data to put in each cell. And then you also have to define. You also have to like put UITableView delegate. This is another protocol that's already defined. So if you want to like have some user interaction with the table content, then you would say like TableView.delegate is equal to self, and then conform to the protocol. This is optional. Like the TableView.data source is required because you have to like say what row, how many rows and what cell is in each row. But the delegate is you can set the delegate optionally if you want to have some user interaction with the table. So some of the functions that's in the UITableView delegate protocol is the height for each row, and what happens if you select or deselect the row. So yeah, so you can, so the height is for height for row at, and the function for selecting and deselecting is deselect row at and deselect row at. So yeah, very similar to the data source. You just do extension, view controller, UITableView delegate, and you can set the height for the row, whatever you want to do when you select or deselect a cell in the table view. Does that make sense? Any questions here? Okay, next thing. So before I talked about how you have to like register a cell for the table view. So normally it would like provide some default cell for each for the table view, but if you want to have your own custom cell, like put your own view and like images on the cell, then you want to create your own table view cell class. And then if you create your own custom cell, then you have to register the cell to tell the table view that I want to use that cell for my table. So yeah, you can see like the images are examples of custom UITableView cells. Does that make sense? Okay. So one thing really important about UITableView cell is a good thing is, so for example, you have like 2,000 songs, and if you just show all 2,000 songs at once, this will take a lot of memory and be really slow. So that's why the concept of like dequeuing and reusing cells is really important, because you only you will only be at once you only create like cells that's shown on the screen. So in this example, you will only like create cells that's the songs that's already like that's on the screen. But when you scroll more, it doesn't create new cells. It reuses the cells that already disappeared, and reuse those cells, but like change the data that's in the cell. Does that make sense? Okay, great. And then that's why when you set up a cell, you do last cell equal table view dot deque reusable cell, and with identifier. And the identifier is to help you distinguish what type of cell it is, because you could have many different custom cell that you have, and then you would use a reuse identifier to identify, I want this table view to use this cell. It's just usually it's just a string that identifies the type of the cell. Okay, any questions on that? On the concept of dequeuing and reusing cells? Okay. And then the way you set up an UI table view is first you would initialize and lay out your table view, and then you will create your own custom UI table view class, table view cell class. And then you register the table view cell with your UI table view, and then you had to set the table view's data source and delegate. So you implement all the function that's required, and then you conform to the UI table view data source and UI table view delegate for your view controller. Yeah. Any questions there? Okay. Then we'll move into a demo. If you want to follow along, there's the starter code on the course website. You can download it. I'll give you guys a few minutes. Does anyone still need more time? Okay. Then I'll go. We can first look at the demo. What's in the starter code? So you have a view controller like usual. And there's a cafeteria class here. So the cafeteria just has a like name. Its favorite. Oh, actually, I will show the finished demo first. Let's see. Okay, so this demo is basically you have like a list of cafeteria that has the name and the rating in a table, and when you like select on it, it like it's basically if you're favoriting this cafeteria, and when you tap on it, it either hides the heart or shows the heart. So that's what we're gonna be building today, and then so yeah, let's go back to this cafeteria class. It has a name, its favorite boolean, and also a rating. And then rating is a enum that's like different ratings of cafeteria. So there's like terrible, bad, moderate, good, and great. So yeah, that's the cafeteria class, and then go back to the view controller. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make the list of data that we want to display on the table view. So we can let's start with actually var cafeterias. It will have type cafeteria list, and then we'll set that to empty for now. And then we can inside view below we can create some cafeterias. So I'm just gonna make some random cafeterias. Name is favorite, false, and then the rating is terrible. And then we can say RPCC false. Let's say moderate. Appel. I guess also moderate. Does anyone want to give me a dining hall? Do they want Becker? Okay. How would you rate Becker? Moderate. Okay. I guess we have some very moderate dining halls. And then once you initialize all these cafeterias, you can put them into the cafeteria array we created here. So you can just do cafeterias is equal to list containing OpenShields, RPCC, Appel, and Becker. Okay, now we have like the data we want our table view to show. And then the next thing we want to do is initialize the table view. So I've already set the table view to be a table view, a UI table view. So then next we just have to do what we usually do, table view dot auto sizing. Okay, translate auto sizing to constraints, set that to false, and then also add the table view to be a sub view of the view controller. And then the next thing, just like normal, we'll have to set the constraints. We can just uncomment this constraints. What this constraints is doing is just basically setting the UI table view for the whole screen of the view controller. So the leading, trailing, top, bottom is just the edges of the view controller. And then the next thing we want to do is we set the delegate and data source for the table view. So you do table view dot data source is equal to self, and then also table view dot delegate equal to self. And then an error will show up saying that you need to conform the view controller to UI table view data source and UI table view delegate. And this is when you do the extend the view controller to conform to those. So you do extension view controller UI table view data source, and also do an extension for the delegate. And then you'll probably, let me see, what's the error here? Oh yeah, so then I talked about how data source requires some function you have to implement. So if it throws you the error, just fix, and it will like tell you the two things you have to implement, which is number of rows in section and self a row at. So the number of rows and section is basically however many cafeteria you have. So you can just return cafeterias.count. And then for cell for row at, this is where you would set up your cell. Since we don't have a UITableView cell yet, we're gonna create our own custom cell. So you have to create a new Swift file. So you can either do Command N, and that will show up this screen. So that's Command N, or you can go to the folder and just right click and new file. Right, and then you have to go to Cocoa Touch class. So click on Cocoa Touch class, and then if you select, like, there's gonna be a drop down of subclasses you can pick from. So pick UITableView cell, and then just name the cell something. So I'm gonna call it cafeteria table view cell, and then click next, create, and then that will create the cafeteria table view cell. Yeah. Oh yeah, so you can do Command N, or you can right click and add a new file here. And then you would do the Cocoa Touch class option, and then from the drop down select UITableView cell and name your class something. I called it cafeteria table view cell. Anyone need me to repeat again? Yeah. Yeah, just click next and then add it, and then create. Okay. And then we're not gonna actually use the two functions they have here, so just delete them. The way we're gonna initialize the UITableView cell is we're gonna make our own init function. So override the init. Pick the one that has the style and the reuse identifier. And we want to use this because we're gonna want the reuse identifier to help with identifying the table view cell. And then it's gonna have a require init error, just fixed. So yeah, this is gonna be your UITableView cell, and then you can go back to view controller and let's finish setting up the cell inside the cell for row at. So the way you do that is you do let cell equal tableview.dequeue reusable cell with identifier 4. So pick that one, and then your reuse identifier is going to be so there's a variable on top that's the reuse identifier. So that's just a string identifying the cell. And then you can just pass that into this. And then so the for part, you have to pass in the index path. Where index path is an object containing a section and a row. So that just tells you what section and what row that cell is in. So for here, since this table view function, one of the parameter is the index path, so that just tells you like whichever row whichever row like the cell is in, so you can just pass it in here, the index path in the parameter. And then we're gonna cast the cell to cafeteria table view cell. So the cell is actually the cell we want it to be. Since we're casting it as an optional, we want to cast it as optional because it might not successfully cast into the cafeteria table view cell. And so this cell is gonna end up being optional. So then we want to either use a if-let or use a garlet to unwrap that. So I'm gonna use a if-let here. So you can do if-let cell, and then so if the cell is not nil, then we want to just return the cell. And if not, then we can just return a UITableView cell. Okay, and then so the next thing we want to do, since we set up the cell here, we still have to register the cell for the table view. So the way you do that is you go back to where you initialize table view, and you have to do table view dot register, and pick the one that says cell class for cell reuse identifier. And your cell class is going to be the custom class we created, cafeteria, table view cell, self. And your reuse identifier is going to be the same one that we used before. So that's the reuse identifier we define at the top. Anyone have questions at this point? So this is all just setting up the table view for the cells. And then the next thing is, so right now, like if you run it, it's not gonna show. Oh, oops. Oh yeah. So okay, we will go into like setting up the table view cell. So we have in the demo we have like a name label, and we'll have a rating label, and also a UI image view for the heart. So we can do name label and so we're gonna have two UI label and also a heart image view. And then we had to set it up in the init. That's where you like how you set up your views in the view controller and view did load. You will set up your views in the init function here. So you can do name label dot font. You just set the font to 14. And let's add that. And then for a UI table view cell, you don't do view.slview, you do content view.slview. So that's just for cells. And then we can also have rating label. So I'm gonna set that as size 12. Okay, and I also forgot to set the auto size resizing. And then I'll set up the heart image view. So the heart image view's image is gonna be UI image. So in assets, there's just a heart image there. So we'll use that. Let me go back to the cell. Okay. So you would use the one where you can pass in the name of the image. Heart, sorry. And then I'll set the content mode to be aspect fit. And then you have to do the trans resizing. And then add the subview. Okay. And then we'll also hide the image in the beginning. So you can just say heart image view hidden is to false. Oh, okay. I have an error. Oh, yeah. You had to since we're overriding the init, we also have to add the super. And oh, did you have a question?
say you're gonna hide it first?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. So it's hidden should be true. Here. And then the next thing we're gonna do is so we've already set up the views, but this cell right now doesn't know what it should put for the name, rating, and heart, right? It doesn't have information on the cafeteria yet. So what we do is we need to give the cell the information it needs to set the name, rating, and the image, like whether it's favorited. So in cell for row at, we want to get the cafeteria at that index. So we can do let cafeteria equal cafeterias at index path dot row. So the table view has rows, right? And we want that row to correspond to the index. We will index into cafeteria the row we are at in the table view. So when when the index path dot row is like 0, then it would take OpenShield. So it would show. We want like OpenShield to show in the first row. So once we get the specific cafeteria for that row, then we want the cell to know like what the name and the rating is. So normally you can probably just do like cell dot name label dot text is equal to cafeteria dot name, but this is like cluttering the view controller, so we don't always want to set this in the view controller. What we can do is in cafeteria table view cell, we can make a function that passes in a cafeteria, and we do all the setting the name label and rating label and the heart accordingly. So I'm gonna make a function called configure, and it's gonna configure for cafeteria. And once we have the cafeteria, then we can save the name label text to be cafeteria dot tag. It's cafeteria dot name, yeah. And then the rating label would be we can just do rating. We can do the string interpolation for cafeteria dot. So cafeteria has a get rating string function, so that just gives you the string of the rating. Since rating is an enum, so you can actually just say cafeteria dot rating. And then last thing is you want to call so you don't have to do this anymore, because you can just call the cells configure function on cafeteria. So you pass the cafeteria at that row into this configure function for the cell, and then in the cell, once you have the cafeteria, it's gonna update the name label and the rating label accordingly. Yeah. Sorry?
What about the heart?
Oh, the heart, well, we're just hiding it in the beginning. So later we're gonna talk about how you can select on it and change the heart. Also, we need to set up the constraints so we can actually see the cell. So I'm just gonna make a setup constraint function. Oops. And minus layout constraint. I'm just gonna put the leading anchor string to be equal to the content views leading anchor. So the content view is just referring to the cell. And then constant like 8. And then also the top anchor string to be content views top anchor. So I'm gonna add a variable called padding that's 8. So then you can just, it's a good practice if you're gonna reuse some padding number to just set a variable for it. So then you can just say like padding instead of typing like 8 every time. And then let's also set the height anchor to a constant. Let me see. Let me make it 50. Actually 20. Oh, okay. Also, the constant needs to be a CG float. So we'll just make the padding a CG float. And then we'll make more constraints. So the rating label, I'm going to set the rating label to be the same as the name label's leading anchor. And then the top anchor to be the bottom of the name label. So just name label dot bottom anchor. And then also the height string to be constant to be 20. Okay, I'm also gonna set a variable for the label height, so we can reuse it. So you can just change it here. Then last thing for the we'll set up the image layout constraint. So that's the, what's it called? Heart image view dot. I'm gonna set the height and width anchor to let me see, to 16, and also the width anchor to 16. Or you could also like make a variable for the width, but just not gonna do that for now. And then I'm gonna set the center Y, so it can be centered, just centered vertically for the cell, equal to the content views center Y anchor. And then lastly, I'm gonna set the trailing anchor to be content view dot trailing, and then negative padding. So that just puts the heart at the very right of the cell. Then we have, once we finish setting up this constraints, let's run it and see if it shows. Let me see the cafeteria. Oh, oops. Yeah, it was missing the parameter here. Anyone have a question or want me to go back to someplace? Oh, the delegate, we'll go to that later. Yeah. The what height is called? Oh, where did you define label height? Oh, I just defined it inside the set of constraints function. Yeah. So yeah, if you run it, you can see like the table view with the 4 cafeterias, and then oh sorry, what's your name? That asked for the delegate. Yeah, what's your name?
Marco.
Marco. Okay. Yeah. So Marco was talking about the UITableView delegate, and we're gonna like work on it now. So one thing you can set in the UITableView delegate is the height of the cell. So you can just let it just look for height for row at, and then let it auto complete. So I'm gonna set the height to be 50, and then you can see like for here actually the table view is a little cut off here. So when we make it 50, it's gonna get bigger, so it will look nicer. Yeah. So that'll be how high. What's the height of the for each cell? Any questions on that? Okay. Then we'll move to the interaction where you select on a cell and they will toggle the heart. So the function that we're going to implement to be called when a cell gets selected is did select row at. So if you like type this select, it will probably autocomplete for you. So for this, you want to get which cafeteria that you selected. So we can say let cafeteria equal cafeterias. Anyone know like what we should put here to index into the cafeteria to find which one you selected on? Look at the parameters of the function. Oh, like what should I index into cafeterias to get the cafeteria that I selected on? Does anyone know? Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh well, index path is right, but you have to say dot row because index path have sections and rows. So you just do index path dot row. So that gives you the cafeteria that you selected. And then when you select a cafeteria, you want to change whether it's favorited or not. So what you can do is you say cafeteria dot is favorite dot toggle. What toggle does is it just toggles the true false. So if it's true, it makes it false. If it's false, it makes it true. So once you do that, cafeteria should be if it was favorited, then it will be not unfavorited. And then we want, so this is just for the cafeteria itself, but we want to also update how the cell looks. So we want to show the heart. So what we need to do is get the cell that we selected. How you do that is let cell equal table view dot cell for row at. And then for this, you have to pass in the index path, so you can just pass in the index path that's in the parameter. And then we want to cast that to a cafeteria table view cell because that's what our cell is. And since the cell is going to be optional, we can unwrap it with an iflet. So if we have this cell, we want to update the cells, whether the cell shows the heart or not. So we can add a function inside the cell class called toggle heart. And then we can pass in is favorite or not. So we can show the image, so heart image view that is hidden equals to not is favorite. So just the whether the heart is hidden is based on whether you favorited the cafeteria or not. Does this part make sense? Okay. And then here, you have the cell. You can just call the cell toggle heart. The cell's toggle heart on the cafeteria's is favorite. Does this part make sense? Oh, I'm missing the parameter again. Any questions on this? Yeah, we can check out what happens. So yeah, so what happens is when I select on this cell, in the very beginning, cafeteria would be, the cafeteria's is favorite would be false, and then when I selected cafeteria's is favorite will be true, and then it will run the cell's toggle heart, and if the toggle heart is for toggle heart you pass in its favorite as true, then its hidden will be false, so it will show the heart image view. And then you'll see like when you select on it, it like shows this gray thing. To get rid of it, you can just do when you set up the cell in cell for row at, you can set the cell's selection style to be none. So by default, Apple's selection style is make it gray, make the background gray. So you can just set the selection style to be none, and then that will make it disappear. And then yeah. Do you have a question? Oh, the toggle? Oh, the constraint, like here? I'll upload the demo later. If you, did this part make sense with the selecting? Okay, then that's it for the demo today. And then just one action item. The homework will be due this Sunday.